The cantina on Nexus Prime was packed with beings from across the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison sat at a round table near the center of the room, nursing his third beer of the evening. His crew surrounded him, laughing at some joke that had been told before he arrived. The air smelled like a mix of alien spices and recycled atmosphere. Morrison looked around the room and smiled. This was what he loved about space stations like Nexus Prime. You could find anyone here. The bug-like Zephyrians clicked their mandibles while they talked business in the corner booth. A group of crystal beings called Vortani hummed in harmony at the bar, their bodies glowing soft blue in the dim light. 3 scholarly Kelthans sat reading data tablets while sipping something that steamed and changed colors. "No way that happened," said Lisa Burke, Morrison's co-pilot. She had short red hair and green eyes that always seemed to be laughing at some private joke. "You cannot make a ship do a barrel roll in an asteroid field." Morrison grinned and took another drink. "I am telling you, it worked. The pirates never saw it coming." "The physics do not work," said Pete Collins, their engineer. He was a big man with calloused hands who could fix anything that had moving parts. "You would have hit 3 different rocks before you completed the turn." "Physics." Morrison waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. "Physics is just suggestions anyway." The crew laughed, but Morrison noticed that the conversation at nearby tables had gotten quieter. A Zephyrian at the next table had turned to listen, its compound eyes reflecting the cantina lights. "Okay, smart guy," Lisa said, leaning forward, with her elbows on the table. "If physics is just suggestions, prove it." Morrison looked around the cantina. The artificial gravity on Nexus Prime was set to Earth normal, but the station rotated to create that gravity. That meant there were some interesting effects if you knew what to look for. He spotted what he needed. "You see that serving tray on the bar?" Morrison pointed to a metal tray sitting on the curved bar about 20 feet away. Above it, a decorative mirror hung on the wall. To the left, a support beam ran from floor to ceiling. "Yeah," Lisa said, following his gaze. "And you, see my glass here?" Morrison held up his half-empty beer glass. "Jake, what are you thinking?" Pete asked. There was worry in his voice. Morrison stood up and grinned. "Watch this." The moment those words left his mouth, something strange happened. Every conversation in the cantina stopped. The Zephyrians at the corner booth started clicking rapidly to each other. The Vortani at the bar began pulsing with orange light instead of blue. The Kelthans looked up from their tablets with expressions that might have been panic. Morrison did not notice. He was focused on his task. He held the glass in his right hand and measured distances with his eyes. The station rotated once every 2 minutes. That created a very slight curve to the artificial gravity field. If he threw the glass at just the right angle and speed, accounting for the rotation and the gravity gradient, he threw the glass. It sailed through the air in a perfect arc, struck the mirror at exactly the right angle, bounced off the support beam, ricocheted off the serving tray, and flew back toward Morrison's table. He caught it smoothly in his left hand without spilling a drop of beer. "There," Morrison said, sitting back down. "Physics." That was when he noticed the cantina was almost empty. The Zephyrians were gone. So were most of the Vortani. Half the Kelthans had disappeared. Only his human crew remained at their table, staring at him with open mouths. "Where did everyone go?" Morrison asked. Lisa pointed toward the main entrance. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see beings hurrying down the corridor outside. Some were talking rapidly into communication devices. Others were dragging luggage behind them like they were leaving in a hurry. "Jake," Pete said slowly, "I think you scared them." Before Morrison could ask what he meant, a tall figure approached their table. It was Commander Veltar, the station's security chief. He was a Kelthan, which meant he looked like a cross between a lizard and a professor. His scales were dark green and his large eyes held an expression that might have been nervous. "Captain Morrison," Veltar said in accented but clear English, "may I speak with you?" "Of course, Commander. What is the problem?" Veltar looked around the nearly empty cantina, then back at Morrison. "The problem, Captain, is that you said those words again." "What words?" "Watch this." Veltar seemed to shudder when he said it. Captain, in the past month, every time a human has said those words on this station, something impossible has happened immediately afterward. Morrison looked confused. It was just a trick with gravity and rotation. Basic physics. Captain, our best scientists have reviewed the security recordings of what you just did. According to their calculations, what you accomplished should have been impossible. The glass should have shattered on the first impact. Even if it had not, the angles were wrong for the trajectory you achieved. But it worked, Morrison said. Yes, Veltar replied. It worked, just like it always works when humans say those words. This is why half my station just evacuated to emergency shelters. Lisa leaned forward. Commander, are you saying that other humans have caused problems? Veltar pulled out a data tablet and scrolled through it. Last week, Engineer Murphy from the cargo hauler Wanderer said watch this before fixing our main computer core by hitting it with a wrench. The week before that, Pilot Anderson said watch this before landing a ship with no engines in our docking bay. 3 days ago, Dr. Williams said, watch this before curing a Vortani disease that had no known treatment by giving the patient human coffee. The human crew exchanged glances. Commander, Morrison said carefully, those sound like normal problem-solving to me. Normal? Veltar's voice went up an octave. Captain, do you understand what you have done to galactic society? Insurance companies across 3 sectors have started adding human watch this clauses to their policies. The Zephyrian military has issued guidelines for dealing with human reality events. Our own medical base stocks extra healing supplies whenever humans dock here. Morrison finished his beer and set the glass down gently. Commander, I think there might be some misunderstanding here. The only misunderstanding, Captain, is that your species seems to think the laws of physics are optional. Veltar put away his tablet. I am asking you, as a favor to interspecies relations, to please avoid saying those words while on my station. Morrison looked at his crew, who were all trying not to laugh. Sure, Commander, Morrison said. We will be more careful with our word choice. Veltar nodded gratefully and walked away. As soon as he was out of earshot, the entire human crew burst into laughter. Did you hear that? Lisa gasped between giggles. Human reality events. I wonder what other humans have been doing, Pete said, wiping tears from his eyes. Morrison grinned and stood up. Well, there is only one way to find out. He walked over to the bar where the lone Vortani bartender was still hiding behind a pile of bottles. Excuse me, Morrison said politely. Could you tell me about these other incidents? The Vortani's glow shifted to deep purple, which Morrison had learned meant fear. Please, the bartender said in a voice like crystal chimes, do not say those words again. 6 weeks after the incident on Nexus Prime, Engineer Pete Collins floated in the zero gravity around a massive hyperspace relay. The structure was bigger than a city block and hummed with energy that could tear holes in space itself. Right now, it was humming wrong. Collins checked his suit readings for the 3rd time. Oxygen was good. Power cells were full. The magnetic boots on his feet kept him anchored to the relay's outer hull. Around him, space stretched out in all directions, filled with distant stars and the blue glow of the nearby Kepler system. Collins, what is your status? The voice in his helmet belonged to Chief Engineer Zixala of the Hegemony. She was leading this repair mission, and she did not sound happy. Still looking at the problem, Collins replied. He pushed himself along the hull using handholds built into the metal surface. The damaged section was easy to spot. Scorch marks and twisted metal showed where a pirate attack had damaged the relay's main control matrix. Collins had been working with the alien engineering team for 3 days now. The Hegemony engineers were smart and careful. They had calculated every possible repair method. They had run computer simulations. They had built mathematical models. All of their solutions required 2 weeks and a complete shutdown of hyperspace traffic through this sector. The problem was that 2 weeks was too long. 3 colony worlds depended on supply ships that used this relay. Without it, people would start running out of food and medicine within 10 days. Collins, please return to the command ship, Zixala said. We need to review the repair calculations again. Collins sighed and pushed off the hull. His suit's small thruster pack carried him toward the engineering ship that hung in space nearby. The ship looked like a giant metal flower, with 5 arms extending from a central hub. Each arm housed a different type of engineering equipment. He landed in the ship's docking bay and went through decontamination. The artificial gravity felt heavy after hours in zero-G. Collins found the engineering team in the main work area, clustered around a holographic display that showed the relay in perfect detail. Zixala looked like a cross between an octopus and a computer. Her species had 8 arms that ended in hands, with dozens of fingers. Each hand could work independently, which made her incredibly good at complex tasks. Right now, all 8 hands were moving across different control panels. The problem is the quantum resonance matrix, she explained to Collins. The pirate weapons disrupted the crystalline structure. We need to realign 47 crystal arrays while maintaining perfect harmonic balance. Collins studied the hologram. Red sections showed damaged areas. Blue lines traced the energy flows that needed to be restored. Yellow dots marked the crystal arrays that needed adjustment. How long did you say this would take? Collins asked. 14 standard days, replied Dr. Kexvin, a hegemony physicist whose head looked like a mushroom with eyes. We must be very precise. One mistake could cause a cascade failure that destroys the entire relay. Collins walked around the hologram, looking at it from different angles. The alien engineers had created a beautiful solution. It was mathematically perfect and completely safe. It was also complicated beyond belief. What if we don't do it that way? Collins asked. All 8 of Zixala's hands stopped moving. Excuse me? What if we skip all the calculations and just fix the broken parts? Dr. Kexvin's mushroom head turned a pale color that Collins had learned meant confusion. Engineer Collins, you cannot simply fix a quantum resonance matrix. The harmonic frequencies must be calibrated to within 1 part per billion. Collins pointed at the hologram. But look at this. The crystals are not really broken. They are just knocked out of alignment. What if we just push them back into place? Push them? Zixala's voice went up several octaves. Engineer Collins, those crystals channel enough energy to power a star. You cannot simply push them. Collins grinned. It was the same grin his wife always said meant trouble was coming. Watch this, he said. The moment those words left his mouth, alarms started going off. Emergency lights began flashing red. The ship's communication system automatically broadcast a priority alert across 3 star systems. Emergency evacuation protocols activated, announced the ship's computer. All non-essential personnel report to evacuation pods immediately. Collins looked around in confusion as the alien engineers began running toward the exits. Where is everyone going? Zixala was backing toward the door, all 8 hands reaching for emergency equipment. Collins, you said the words. What words? Watch this. When humans say those words, reality stops working properly. Collins watched as the engineering team fled the work area. Even Dr. Kexvin was moving faster than Collins had ever seen a hegemony citizen move. But I haven't done anything yet, Collins called after them. That's the point, Zixala shouted back. You're about to. Collins found himself alone with the holographic display. Through the ship's windows, he could see other vessels in the area, moving to what they probably considered a safe distance. His suit radio crackled with reports of the human reality event in progress. He shook his head and walked back to the equipment lockers. If everyone was going to panic anyway, he might as well get to work. Collins put his suit back on and returned to the relay. This time he brought some tools that the hegemony engineers would probably consider primitive. A plasma torch, a gravity manipulator that was basically a very sophisticated crowbar, a harmonic tuner that looked like a tuning fork made of metal and crystal. He found the first misaligned crystal array and examined it closely. The crystal was about the size of a refrigerator and glowed with internal light. Pirate weapons had knocked it 3 degrees off its proper angle. The hegemony solution involved building a complex framework to hold it, while microscopic adjustments were made over several hours. Collins just grabbed it with his suit's mechanical arms and twisted it back into place. The crystal's glow immediately became brighter and more stable. Energy readings on Collins's suit display jumped back to normal levels. Huh, Collins said to himself. That was easy. He moved to the next crystal. This one was cracked down the middle, which the alien said would require complete replacement. Collins looked at the crack and had an idea. He used his plasma torch to heat the crystal just enough to make it flexible, then pressed the crack closed with his hands. The crystal fused back together and began glowing normally. Collins worked his way through all 47 crystal arrays. Some needed to be rotated, others needed gentle taps with the gravity manipulator. A few required fine-tuning with the harmonic device. The whole job took him about 3 hours. When he finished, the relay was humming perfectly. Energy flowed through it in smooth, stable patterns. Hyperspace traffic could resume immediately. Collins contacted the engineering ship. Hey, Zixala, you can come back now. It's fixed. There was a long silence on the radio. Collins, Zixala's voice was very quiet. Our sensors show the relay operating at 127% of normal efficiency. Is that bad? Collins, that should be impossible. The relay is working better than when it was new. Collins looked at his handiwork and smiled. Sometimes the simple way works best. He could hear panicked conversations in alien languages over the radio. Apparently, news of the repair was spreading quickly through the local space traffic. Collins, Zixala said, please never say those words again. What words? Watch this. Collins laughed. No promises. Dr. Amy Rodriguez sat in her office on Harmony Station, staring at a stack of reports that seemed to grow bigger every day. Each report told the same basic story. A human would say, watch this, and then do something that should have been impossible. The alien witnesses would panic, evacuate, or call for help. The impossible thing would work perfectly. Rodriguez was a xenopsychologist, which meant she studied how different alien species thought and behaved. The Galactic Council had asked her to figure out what was happening with humans. They called it the human paradox, and everyone seemed very worried about it. She picked up the first report and read it again. Marine Sergeant Tony Martinez had been trapped in a supply depot when Void Raiders attacked the mining colony on Kepler 7. The depot was surrounded and Martinez was alone with no weapons, except what he could find in storage. According to the report, Martinez had radioed the evacuation ships and said, watch this, before the transmission cut out. 20 minutes later, the entire Void Raider assault force retreated in confusion. Security recordings showed that Martinez had somehow built explosives from coffee grounds, medical supplies, and cleaning products. The explosives had worked better than military-grade weapons. Rodriguez set that report aside and picked up another. 1. Pilot Hannah Foster had been flying supplies to a research station when her ship got caught in an unstable wormhole. The wormhole was collapsing, and no ship had ever survived passage through an unstable one. Foster had radioed "watch this" to the research station before flying directly into the center of the collapse. She had emerged on the other side completely undamaged. The scientists said it was mathematically impossible. The third report was about mechanic Gary Webb on a deep space mining platform. Life support had failed and everyone was going to suffocate in 6 hours. The backup systems were completely broken and replacement parts would not arrive for 3 days. Webb had told his supervisor, watch this, and then built a new life support system using parts from a food processor, some spare electronics, and a box of emergency medical kits. The improvised system had worked perfectly and was still running. Months later, Rodriguez rubbed her temples. She had 47 more reports just like these. Every single one followed the same pattern. Human says, watch this. Impossible situation gets solved in an impossible way. Everyone survives except the bad guys or the problem. A soft chime indicated someone was at her office door. Come in, Rodriguez called. Dr. Ketmore entered the office. He was a Kelthan, scientist who had been assigned to help with the investigation. His lizard-like face showed the expression that meant deep thought. Dr. Rodriguez, Ketmore said, I have received the insurance reports you requested. What did you find? Ketmore sat down carefully in the chair across from her desk. It is remarkable. In the past 6 months, insurance claims involving humans have decreased by 60%. However, claims for acts of impossible human intervention have increased by 400%. Rodriguez leaned forward. What does that mean? It means that humans are solving problems that should kill them, but they are solving those problems in ways that terrify everyone else. Ketmore pulled out a data tablet. For example, the Centauri Mining Consortium now requires all human employees to wear monitoring devices, not to track them, but to warn other species when a human is about to attempt something impossible. That seems extreme. Doctor, 3 different alien governments have created new military positions called human probability officers. Their job is to predict when humans might say those words and prepare emergency response teams. Rodriguez stood up and walked to the window. Harmony Station orbited a beautiful blue planet where dozens of species had built a peaceful colony together. Ships from across the galaxy docked here every day. She could see a human cargo vessel approaching one of the docking bays. Ketmore, what do your people think is happening? The Kelthan scientist was quiet for a moment. There are several theories. Some believe humans have developed psychic abilities that allow them to manipulate probability. Others think humans carry some kind of technology that we cannot detect. A few scientists believe that humans have made a deal with higher dimensional beings. So what do you think? I think humans are just very good at ignoring the difference between possible and impossible. Rodriguez turned back to face him. Explain that. Ketmore set his tablet on the desk. Every other species in the galaxy approaches problems by first calculating whether a solution is possible. If our calculations show something cannot be done, we find a different approach. Humans seem to skip that step entirely. You think we just don't calculate the odds? I think you calculate different odds. When other species see a problem with a 1% chance of success, we look for a different solution. When humans see the same problem, they focus on the 1%. Rodriguez sat back down. That actually made sense. She thought about her own species and how they approached challenges. Humans did have a tendency to attempt things that seemed impossible. But that doesn't explain why it works, she said. Perhaps it works because you believe it will work, Ketmore suggested. Or perhaps the universe responds differently to beings who refuse to accept limitations. Rodriguez picked up another report. This one was about a human diplomat who had ended a 3-way war by challenging all the leaders to a game he made up on the spot. He had said, "Watch this," before explaining rules that made no sense to anyone except him. Somehow, playing the game had made all 3 sides realize their war was stupid. Ketmore, have you seen the latest reports from the Galactic Science Consortium? The ones about reality instability? Yes, those are concerning. Rodriguez found the report she was looking for. They say that areas with high concentrations of humans show measurable changes in probability fields. Unlikely events become more likely. Impossible events become merely improbable. Which supports the theory that humans are somehow affecting reality itself. Or, Rodriguez said slowly, reality was always more flexible than we thought, and humans are just the first species willing to test those limits. Ketmore's eyes widened. You think the universe allows impossible things, but only for species brave enough or foolish enough to try them? I think maybe impossible is just another word for nobody has tried it yet. A communication alert sounded from Rodriguez's desk terminal. She activated the screen and found herself looking at Commander Veltar from Nexus Prime. Dr. Rodriguez, Veltar said, we have another incident. A human trader just said those words before attempting to negotiate a peace treaty between 2 species that have been at war for 300 years. Did it work? They signed the treaty 20 minutes ago. They are now planning a joint celebration, festival. Rodriguez looked at Ketmore, who was shaking his head in amazement. Commander, Rodriguez said, we need to expand our research. I want to document every single case where a human says, watch this, and record exactly what happens. Doctor, with respect, we are already doing that. The problem is that we now have so many cases that our computers cannot process them all. How many cases? Veltar consulted something off-screen. As of this morning, we have recorded 2,437 separate incidents across 42 star systems. The rate is increasing exponentially. Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. Commander, Are you saying that humans saying "watch this" is becoming more common? Doctor, I am saying that the phrase has become so associated with impossible events that some alien species have started using it as a battle cry. Yesterday, a Zephyrian pilot said, "Watch this" in your language before successfully ramming his fighter into a pirate dreadnought and somehow surviving the explosion. The phenomenon is spreading to other species. It appears that belief in human impossibility is becoming self-fulfilling even for non-humans. Rodriguez ended the communication and sat back in her chair. "Ketmore," she said quietly, "I think we have a much bigger problem than we thought." Captain Bobby Kane stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Pioneer, staring at the view screen in disbelief. What he was looking at should not exist. A massive black sphere hung in space ahead of them, consuming everything that came near. It were stars, asteroids, even light itself disappeared into the thing's surface. "Linda, tell me you have some good news," Kane said to his science officer. Lieutenant Linda Hayes looked up from her sensor console. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly as she worked. "Captain, this thing is consuming matter at an exponential rate. If it continues growing at this speed, it will reach the Centauri system in 18 hours. Kane felt his stomach drop. The Centauri system had 12 billion people living on 6 different worlds. It was one of the most populated systems in the galaxy. What about evacuation? "Sir, there is no way to evacuate 12 billion people in 18 hours, even if we had enough ships, which we do not." Kane looked around the bridge at his crew. They had been exploring the outer rim when the distress signal came in. Now they were part of a hastily assembled rescue fleet that included ships from a dozen different species. Everyone was trying to find a way to stop the space anomaly before it destroyed an entire star system. "Captain," came a voice over the communication system. "This is Admiral Thexara of the Hegemony Fleet. Please report to the command meeting." Kane activated his personal communicator. "On my way, Admiral." He left the bridge and took a shuttle to the Hegemony command ship. The meeting was being held in a massive conference room filled with holographic displays showing the anomaly from every angle. Representatives from 12 different species stood around the displays, all talking at once. Admiral Thexara was a tall, thin being with blue skin and 4 arms. She had been chosen to lead the rescue effort because the Hegemony had the most advanced science ships in the fleet. "Captain Kane," the Admiral said as he entered. "We were just reviewing our options." Kane looked at the displays. The anomaly was definitely getting bigger. Red numbers showed its growth rate increasing every few minutes. "What have you tried so far?" Kane asked. "Everything," replied Dr. Zelnoth, a Vortani scientist whose crystal body was pulsing with stressed orange light. "We have fired every type of weapon at it. We have tried to contain it with force fields. We have attempted to collapse it with gravitational devices. Nothing works. It just absorbs everything and grows larger." "What about evacuating the anomaly's path?" Admiral Thexara's 4 arms moved in what Kane recognized as a gesture of frustration. "Captain, we cannot move 12 billion people. Even if we could, where would we take them? This thing shows no signs of stopping after it consumes Centauri." Kane studied the holographic displays more carefully. The anomaly was perfectly spherical and completely black. Energy readings showed it was some kind of space-time distortion that was feeding on the fabric of reality itself. "What caused it?" Kane asked. "Unknown," Dr. Zelnoth replied. "It appeared suddenly 3 days ago. Our best theory is that it is a collapsed dimension that is trying to expand into our reality." Kane walked around the display, looking at it from different angles. Something about the energy readings caught his attention. "Doctor, show me the energy patterns again." The display changed to show waves of energy flowing into the anomaly. But Kane noticed something the alien scientists had missed. The energy was not just flowing in randomly. There was a pattern to it, like a rhythm. "Linda," Kane called to his science officer over the communicator, "I need you to look at something." Hayes appeared on a small screen next to the main display. "Yes, Captain?" "Look at the energy absorption pattern. Does it remind you of anything?" Hayes studied the readings for a moment. "Captain, it looks almost like a feedback loop, like the anomaly is feeding energy back into itself to maintain its growth." What if we could disrupt that feedback loop? Admiral Thexera moved closer. Captain Kane, we have tried every form of energy disruption known to science. But have you tried disrupting it from the inside? The room fell silent. Every alien in the meeting turned to stare at Kane. Captain, Dr. Zelnoth said slowly, you cannot go inside that anomaly. Nothing that enters it has ever returned. Kane smiled. It was the same smile his crew always said meant he was about to do something crazy. What if we went in fast enough, and with enough energy to create our own disruption? Impossible, said Admiral Thexera. The gravitational forces would destroy any ship before it reached the center. What if we overloaded our reactor and detonated it at exactly the right moment and location? Captain, that is suicide, and even if you survived long enough to detonate your reactor, there is no guarantee it would work. Kane looked at the display, again. In his mind, he could see how it might work. If they flew straight into the anomaly's event horizon and detonated their reactor at the exact center, the explosion might disrupt the feedback loop long enough for the anomaly to collapse. It was completely insane. It violated every rule of physics and common sense. No rational being would attempt it. Watch this, Kane started to say. He never finished the sentence. The moment the first word left his mouth, every alien in the room began running for the exits. Emergency alarms started blaring throughout the command ship. Automatic systems began broadcasting evacuation warnings across the entire rescue fleet. Human reality event in progress, announced the ship's computer. All non-essential personnel report to evacuation pods immediately. Kane stood alone in the conference room watching through the windows as alien ships began jumping to hyperspace. Within minutes, every non-human vessel in the rescue fleet had disappeared, leaving only Kane's ship and 3 other human vessels. Captain, Linda's voice came over the communicator. The entire alien fleet just evacuated the area. What did you do? Kane laughed despite the situation. I said the magic words. Sir, we are receiving emergency broadcasts from half the galaxy. They are saying you are about to attempt something impossible. Linda, get me a communication channel to the other human ships. A few moments later, Kane was talking to the captains of the cargo hauler Defiant, the research vessel Explorer, and the military escort Defender. Gentlemen, Kane said, I have a plan to stop this thing. It is completely crazy and will probably kill us all. Sounds like a Tuesday, replied Captain Murphy of the Defiant. What do you need us to do? Asked Captain Rodriguez of the Explorer. Kane explained his idea. The other captains listened without interruption. So, let me understand this, said Captain Davis of the Defender. You want to fly into a space anomaly that destroys everything it touches and explode our ships at exactly the right moment to disrupt forces we do not understand. That is about right, Kane confirmed. Well, Davis said, it is not the stupidest plan I have ever heard. When do we start? Murphy asked. Kane looked at the anomaly on his view screen. It was noticeably larger than it had been an hour ago. Right. Now form up on my position. We go in fast and we go in together. The 4 human ships arranged themselves in a diamond formation and began accelerating toward the anomaly. Behind them, space was empty, except for the distant glow of stars. Captain, Linda said quietly, our communication systems are picking up transmissions from across the galaxy. Every major news network is covering this. They are calling it the largest human reality event in recorded history. Kane gripped his captain's chair as they approached the anomaly's event horizon. Linda, if this works, remind me to never say those words again. And if it does not work? Kane smiled. Then it will not matter what we say. The Pioneer and her 3 sister ships disappeared into the black sphere, leaving behind only silence and the hope that impossible things sometimes work exactly because they are impossible. 6 months after the Centauri incident, Commander Rick Stone stood outside the massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers. The building was enormous, shaped like a crystal pyramid that reached into the clouds. Representatives from over 300 species worked here, making decisions that affected trillions of beings across the galaxy. Stone adjusted his dress uniform and checked his presentation materials one more time. Today he was supposed to explain human integration into galactic society. After the events at Centauri, everyone wanted to understand how humans fit into the larger community of species. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and Stone walked into the council chambers. The room was huge, with seats arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking platform. Hundreds of alien beings filled the seats, representing every major species in the galaxy. Stone recognized many of the species from his years in the diplomatic corps. The insectoid Zephyrians sat in the upper levels, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber lights. The crystalline Vortani hummed softly in harmonic groups. The scholarly Kelthans read data tablets while listening. Dozens of other species filled the remaining seats. As Stone walked to the central platform, he noticed something strange. Every alien in the room was watching him with what looked like nervous attention. Some had positioned themselves near emergency exits. Others wore what appeared to be protective equipment. "Honorable representatives," Stone began, "I am here today to discuss human participation in galactic society." A murmur went through the chamber. Stone saw several aliens checking their communication devices. "I know there have been concerns about human behavior, particularly regarding what you call human reality events. I want to assure you that humans do not actually possess supernatural abilities." Stone activated his holographic display. Charts and graphs appeared in the air above the platform, showing data about human problem-solving methods. What humans do possess is a different approach to challenges. Where other species calculate probability and seek guaranteed solutions, humans tend to focus on possibility rather than probability. The hologram showed a comparison between typical alien problem-solving methods and human approaches. The alien methods were careful, methodical, and safe. The human methods were direct, intuitive, and often involved significant risk. For example, Stone continued, when faced with a problem that has a 1% chance of success, most species will look for an alternative with better odds. Humans will attempt to succeed within that 1%. He noticed that the chamber had become very quiet. Even the usual background sounds of alien conversation had stopped. This difference in approach explains why human actions often seem impossible to other species. We are not breaking the laws of physics. We are simply willing to operate within margins that other species consider too dangerous. Stone changed the holographic display to show the Centauri incident. A three-dimensional model of the space anomaly appeared, along with data about the rescue mission. The recent situation at Centauri is a perfect example. Captain Kane and his crew succeeded, not because they had special powers, but because they were willing to attempt a solution that other species had dismissed as impossible. A Zephyrian representative in the upper section raised one of its arms. "Commander Stone, are you saying that humans simply ignore mathematical probability?" "Not ignore," Stone replied. "We interpret it differently. Where you see a 1% chance of success as failure, we see it as possibility." Stone was getting excited about his presentation. This was exactly the kind of discussion he had hoped to generate. He moved to the next slide, which showed detailed analyses of human decision-making processes. "Watch this," Stone said, pointing to a particularly complex chart that demonstrated human risk assessment. This graph shows how humans evaluate potential outcomes differently than other species. The moment those words left his mouth, everything changed. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the council chambers. Red lights flashed from the ceiling. The automated voice of the building's safety system announced, "Human reality event detected. All non-human personnel evacuate immediately. Threat level maximum." Stone watched in amazement as every single alien representative began running for the exits. The Zephyrians flew toward the upper emergency exits. The Vortani teleported directly through the walls. The Kelthans moved with surprising speed toward the main doors. Within 30 seconds, the entire council chamber was empty except for Stone and the few human observers who had been seated in a special section. Stone stood alone on the central platform, his holographic presentation still running. Through the chamber's transparent walls, he could see alien security forces setting up perimeters around the building. Emergency vehicles were arriving from all directions. His presentation materials floated in the air above him, showing charts about human psychology and risk assessment. The irony was not lost on him. Lieutenant Kate Murphy, his aide, approached the platform from the human observer section. She was trying very hard not to laugh. "Sir," Murphy said, "I think you just proved your point about human unpredictability." Stone looked around the empty chamber. "I was just trying to show them a pie chart." "Yes, sir, but you said the words while doing it." Stone realized what had happened. "Kate, I didn't mean to cause a galaxy-wide emergency alert. I was just explaining data visualization." "Sir, with respect, that's what makes it even worse. You triggered a maximum threat response with a presentation slide." Stone's communicator began beeping with incoming messages. He activated it and found dozens of priority alerts from across the galaxy. "Commander Stone," came the voice of Admiral Thexera from the Hegemony Fleet. "We are detecting massive probability fluctuations in your area. What are you attempting?" "Admiral, I'm giving a presentation to the Galactic Council about human integration." There was a long pause. "Commander, your presentation has been classified as a potential reality-altering event. We have 3 battle fleets standing by in case you succeed in whatever you are trying to accomplish." Stone looked at Murphy, who was now openly laughing. "Admiral, I was explaining why humans are not actually dangerous to galactic society." "Commander, you just caused the largest evacuation in Council history by pointing at a chart. How is that not dangerous?" Stone sat down on the platform steps and put his head in his hands. "Kate, I think we have a problem." "Sir, I think we are the problem." Stone's communicator chimed with another message. This one was from Dr. Amy Rodriguez, the xenopsychologist who had been studying human behavior. "Commander Stone, congratulations. You have just provided the most perfect example of human paradox in recorded history. You attempted to prove that humans are not reality-altering beings by accidentally triggering the largest reality-altering event response in galactic history." Stone stood up and looked at his presentation materials, still floating in the empty chamber. "Kate, what do you think the odds are that they'll let me finish my presentation?" Murphy considered this seriously. "Sir, I'd say about 1%. Stone grinned. "Perfect. Those are exactly the kind of odds humans work best with." Outside the council chambers, alien news crews were setting up equipment to broadcast what they were calling the Great Human Presentation Event. Emergency responders from 12 different species waited to see what impossible thing would happen next. Stone straightened his uniform and walked back to the platform. "Well," he said to the empty chamber, "if they want a demonstration of human unpredictability, I might as well give them one." He reactivated his presentation and continued explaining human psychology to an audience of empty seats, while the entire galaxy watched and waited for reality to do something impossible. It was, Stone reflected, probably the most human thing he could possibly do.